Red Force stands as one of the world's tallest and fastest roller coasters, currently ranking as the third tallest and fastest at the time of this recording. While it doesn't hold the title for the absolute fastest, it does claim the distinction of being the world's fastest roller coaster propelled by linear synchronous motors, or LSMs, which are electric motors. This reigning title will continue until the opening of Top Thrill 2 at Cedar Point in 2024. Red Force launches its trains from nearly 0 to 180 kilometers per hour in a mere 5 seconds, all without any physical interaction between the train and electric launch system. This astonishing speed owes its existence to a substantial burst of electricity that surges through the launch system, a peak load of 4 megawatts. This is enough to propel each train up and over a 112-meter tall top hat. Let's delve into the astounding magnitude of this electrical power consumption and explore how Red Force's remarkable power management system consistently accomplishes this feat. If you enjoy the video as it plays, I kindly request your support by clicking the like button, as it greatly helps the channel navigate the challenges of the YouTube algorithm. Without further ado, let's dive into the theme park marvel that is Red Force. Manufactured by Intamin Amusement Rides, Red Force made its debut on April 7th, 2017, coinciding with the grand opening of Ferrariland, a brand new theme park at the PortAventura World Resort near Barcelona in Spain. The resort's original theme park, PortAventura, hosts a different Intamin launching roller coaster named Furious Baco. However, Furious Baco employs a hydraulic launch system, which is far more intricate than the LSMs used in Red Force. Additionally, Furious Baco offers a slower ride, propelling its trains to just 135 kilometers per hour. What sets Red Force apart as a revolutionary coaster is its ability to attain a launch speed previously achievable with only alternative launch technologies, such as the hydraulic launch in Furious Baco or the compressed air launch found in a ride like Dodonpa at Fuji-Q Highland in Japan. Dodonpa achieves the same launch speed as Red Force, 180 kilometers per hour, but accomplishes this in a mere 1.56 seconds of acceleration. On the other hand, Kingda Ka at Six Flags Great Adventure in the United States utilizes a hydraulic launch to reach an advertised 206 kilometers per hour in just 3.5 seconds of acceleration, which catapults each train up and over the tallest point on any roller coaster globally at 139 meters. Meanwhile, Formula Rossa at Ferrari World in Abu Dhabi also employs a hydraulic launch to secure the title of the world's fastest roller coaster, achieving 240 kilometers per hour in a mere 4.9 seconds of acceleration. While Red Force may not reach the same maximum speed or deliver as rapid an acceleration as the other coasters I just named, it distinguishes itself by consistently, efficiently, and with far fewer complications, achieving its top speed and acceleration. Hydraulic launches are intricate and complicated, comprising a multitude of components, sensors, moving parts, and a combination of both mechanical and hydraulic systems. Every single element must be in a proper working order, otherwise the ride's control system will detect the issue and shut down the ride. To illustrate, along the launch track of hydraulic launching roller coasters, you can find hundreds of retractable brake fins. Each brake fin is linked to an actuator, responsible for lowering the brake during a launch and returning it to its set position in case a train rolls back into the launch track. These actuators are equipped with multiple sensors to monitor the position of each brake fin. If even one sensor detects an error or records incorrect data, the ride's control system can halt operations. More often than not, it's the retractable brakes that lead to repeated shutdowns of rides like Kingda Ka throughout each day. Additionally, there are even more retractable brakes not as clearly visible to the naked eye. They're built into the end of the launch track to decelerate the launch system itself. In contrast, the electric motors used in LSM launches, known as stators, can be used as magnetic brakes to slow down a train that fails to crest the following incline and rolls back into the launch track. The stators remain fixed in position, resulting in a significant reduction in moving parts and sensors compared to the hundreds of retractable brakes found in rides like Kingda Ka. Now, technically speaking, Red Force does incorporate retractable brakes at the end of its launch track, but far less than what most hydraulic launching coasters have. We'll discuss the reason for this later in the video. The issue of adjustable brakes in hydraulic launching coasters only scratches the surface of their complexities. Despite hydraulic launches offering my personal favorite launch experience in the amusement industry, they suffer from excessive downtime. Short closures are guaranteed several times a day. Sometimes closures are for extended periods, ranging from weeks to months to sometimes well over a year. These systems demand more maintenance than most roller coasters and cost a great deal for replacement parts and upkeep. For example, the steel launch cables which pull each train down the track require replacement even in the middle of an operating season, and the hydraulic motors driving the cable winch can malfunction, necessitating replacement. Again, this is just the tip of the iceberg. Intamin no longer sell hydraulic launch coasters and now exclusively offer tire drive launches or LSM launches as seen in Red Force. When comparing an LSM launch to a hydraulic one, LSM launches resemble electric vehicles. Both are powered by electricity and their motor technology is notably similar, just in a different form factor. Overall, there are fewer distinct parts and components along with a minimal number of moving parts, significantly reducing the likelihood of malfunctions. In the context of hydraulic launching coasters, a fair analogy would liken them not to today's internal combustion engines found in gas-powered cars, but rather to the even older external combustion engine found in antiquated steam locomotives. While steam trains were known for their formidable power and used to run much of the world, they were exceedingly complex in terms of systems and demanded extensive maintenance to remain operational, similar to Intamin's hydraulic launching roller coasters. I always feel sorry for the maintenance workers at Kingda Ka. Every time a brake acts up on the launch track, you'll spot a maintenance worker walking far down the launch catwalk to inspect a faulty brake. Sometimes they have to walk out to the same faulty brake again and again, after the ride continuously breaks down every 3 trains for the same faulty brake. You know what would not improve the reliability of Kingda Ka, but would help maintenance workers with the aggravating repetitive walk back and forth on the launch catwalk? A pair of Veseys. Veseys are my go-to theme park shoe. They're extremely comfortable, breathable, stylish, lightweight, and most importantly waterproof. Rock a pair on a rainy day when theme parks are at their emptiest and your socks will stay dry all day. Veseys will benefit not only you, but also the maintenance workers at a hydraulic launching roller coaster, especially the new Vesey Sohos, which take style to the next level while remaining waterproof and perfect for walking. They're made of a low-maintenance vegan leather which contrasts the high maintenance of a ride like Kingda Ka. Vesey also has their new Overcast jacket, and just like Vesey's shoes, the Overcast is 100% waterproof, making it perfect for rainy days at a theme park when crowds are at their lightest. It features a stretchy shell that is both waterproof and wind resistant, a soft fleece lining for added warmth on chilly days, a relaxed fit, and secure zipper pockets, allowing you to keep your loose articles secure on any roller coaster that doesn't require you to purchase a $2 locker. Check out Vesey's awesome new Soho shoe and their new Overcast jacket using the QR code in the video or at vesey.com/ElToroRyan. Use code ElToroRyan for 15% off your order. In contrast to the mechanics of a hydraulic launching roller coaster, the maintenance team at Red Force is likely to have a much more straightforward job. As previously mentioned, the LSM launch system boasts minimal moving parts, significantly reducing the likelihood of downtime. Compared to a ride like Kingda Ka, Red Force consistently operates as a highly reliable ride, despite the fact that it unleashes a substantial 4 megawatts of electricity every time it launches a train. Remarkably, this energy dissipates within seconds, and even more impressively, the ride can reproduce this energy level just 30 seconds later for the next launch. To clarify for those unfamiliar, a watt serves as a unit of power. You may already be familiar with volts and amps, with volts representing the pressure of electricity flow through a wire, and amps denoting the rate or flow through an electrical wire. The multiplication of volts by amps results in watts. Nearly every electrical device carries a power rating, which reflects the rate of maximum energy consumption per second by that device. For instance, my 60-inch LG TV has a power rating of 94 watts, and El Toro Wifey's PlayStation 5 has a power rating of 350 watts. 1 megawatt equals 1 million watts. Disregarding any electrical losses which are common in most electrical systems, it would take 11,428 PlayStation 5s, all running at full power, to match the 4 megawatts of Red Force's launch, or 42,553 60-inch LG TVs. The utilization of an LSM launch to achieve Red Force's top speed only became more feasible once the underlying technology matured to a necessary point. This mirrors the progression of electric cars, which became practical as the energy density of batteries increased, allowing EV battery packs to store the necessary power to drive long distances without becoming excessively heavy. I'll delve into the battery comparisons later in this video, but let's start by comparing the motors of an EV to Red Force. In my Tesla Model Y long range, there is a 91 kilowatt motor on the front axle and a 200 kilowatt motor on the rear axle, resulting in a combined power output of 291 kilowatts. For reference, 1 megawatt equals 1000 kilowatts. Even when I push the accelerator pedal to the floor to unleash the full 291 kilowatts, Red Force still exerts nearly 14 times the power output of my car, again without accounting for any electrical losses. It's worth noting that 291 kilowatts are sufficient to accelerate my 1000 979 kilogram crossover from 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in 5 seconds. Moreover, the Tesla Model S Plaid with its triple motor setup can deliver a combined 760 kilowatts, enough to accelerate the even heavier 2,162 kilogram sedan from 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in an advertised 2.1 seconds. Red Force just about matches this acceleration and launches from nearly 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in just over 2 seconds. In the process, Red Force still exerts 5.25 times the power output of a Tesla Model S Plaid. But when not doing high-speed accelerations, aka driving your car normally, EVs do not consume nearly this much electricity. This is how on a single charge, most EVs can drive quite long distances. But even when you press the accelerator pedal all the way to the floor, the sudden surge of electricity comes from the vehicle's onboard power in its battery pack, rather than directly from the electrical grid. In fact, the only significant surge in electricity on the electrical grid from an EV is during charging, primarily during DC fast charging where EVs are rapidly charged. For instance, my Model Y can DC fast charge at a rated rate of 250 kilowatts, and some EVs can charge even faster. But unlike an EV, Red Force does pull power from the electrical grid every time it launches a train, and a substantially larger amount of power than most EVs will ever demand. This could pose a major threat to the local power grid, but thankfully Red Force has an incredible power management system that means for each launch, the ride only needs 1 megawatt of power from the grid rather than 4, a 300% reduction. This drastically reduces the burden on the local electrical grid and lowers the electrical cost to operate Red Force. Unlike at home where you may pay for the total amount of electricity you use in a month, the PortaVentura Resort is charged based on the overall peak load of electricity demanded by the park, at least according to Daniel Chopin, the current vice president of design and development at Intamin. Now, total electrical consumption is a slightly different unit of energy, which I'll explain shortly. So what supplies the other 3 megawatts of electricity for each launch? The answer is energy storage, similar to the large lithium-ion battery packs found in EVs, but better tailored for Red Force. Instead of a lithium-ion battery, Red Force utilizes a 3 megawatt supercapacitor manufactured by EnDriveTech. For context, EnDriveTech also manufactured the LSM launch system used on Red Force. EnDriveTech dubs their supercapacitor Brick FlexConvert SCES SuperCap Energy Storage, which I'll just refer to as SuperCap for short. More specifically, Red Force uses EnDriveTech's SCES 600 DC, most likely several of them, maybe 5 to be exact. This means the system charges at a nominal rate of 600 kilowatts between launches, is able to output a peak of 3 megawatts, and features 25 megajoules of total energy. If you don't know what these stats mean, I'll shed more light on them through the remainder of the video. You may be familiar with other launching roller coasters that employ energy storage systems. The Incredible Hulk at Universal's Islands of Adventure features an uphill launch which accelerates trains to 64 kilometers per hour in just 2 seconds. The Hulk with its heavier trains and uphill launch actually requires a peak load of 8 megawatts to accelerate trains to about 1/3 the speed of Red Force's launch. To avoid overburdening the local electrical grid, Hulk features its own power plant where electricity from the grid is continuously fed into motors that spin extremely heavy flywheels. The flywheels then spin electrical generators that store the insane electricity needed for every launch. Compared to the flywheel system used on the Incredible Hulk, EnDriveTech SuperCap has essentially 0 moving parts, and I'd consider it a technological leap compared to Hulk's flywheel system. Just like a battery pack in an EV, supercapacitors store electrical energy in a stationary manner, and compared to batteries, supercapacitors are much better suited for Red Force. Batteries excel in energy density, making them ideal for EVs, as they provide the necessary energy storage at a lower weight. A lighter EV requires less energy to travel, resulting in a longer range on a single charge. However, batteries lack in their power density, meaning unless you have an extraordinary amount of them, they are unable to exert the ridiculous 3 megawatt surge required for Red Force. While supercapacitors have a much lower energy density than batteries, making them less suitable as the primary power source in an EV, they have a much higher power density, meaning they can discharge extremely powerfully and quickly, making the 3 megawatt surge possible. Even better, supercapacitors charge incredibly quickly, much more so than batteries. Red Force can theoretically launch a train every 36 seconds, at least according to Intamin. With each launch taking 5 seconds, this means the supercaps have just about 30 seconds to recharge for the next potential launch. With batteries, this quick window would not be possible. Supercapacitors are also advantageous because they can be charged and discharged many more times than batteries can without degrading. After a certain number of charge cycles where a battery is drained by a full 100%, batteries will degrade, meaning less of the overall battery is available available for energy storage. This is quite common in smartphones and even led to a major fiasco with Apple a few years back. Fortunately, this degradation is less pronounced in EVs thanks to advanced battery management systems and better charging practices. Nevertheless, battery degradation is not suitable for Red Force as it needs a consistent level of power to pull from. Meanwhile, supercapacitors can be charged and discharged hundreds of thousands of times with almost zero degradation, which is much better suited for Red Force where the supercaps can be cycled hundreds of times a day. Now, while the video title recognizes the insane surge of electricity required for each launch, the overall electrical consumption per launch might be lower than you'd think, at least it is for me. To dive into this, let's discuss another unit of electricity, watt-hours. We previously discussed that watts are a unit of power, while watt-hours are a measure of total electrical consumption. For instance, if a TV runs at a power of 100 watts for an entire hour, it will have consumed 100 watt-hours of electricity, and then over the course of 10 hours, it will have consumed 1000 watt-hours, or 1 kilowatt-hour. Kilowatt-hours are the most common unit for electrical consumption. For instance, electricity bills are based on the total number of kilowatt-hours you consume in a month. In the month of September, I used a total of 498 kilowatt-hours in my apartment. On the other hand, large department stores can use as many as 60,000 kilowatt-hours a month. My Model Y has used over 12,400 kilowatt-hours to travel over 70,000 kilometers. Let's try to calculate the number of kilowatt-hours required each time Red Force launches a train. Red Force's launch is 5 seconds long, which would be how long electricity is drawn for. There are 3,600 seconds in an hour. Dividing 5 seconds by 3,600 seconds means each launch takes just 0.0014 of an hour. The ride requires a peak load of 4 megawatts, which is equivalent to 4,000 kilowatts. Let's assume a worst case scenario that the 4,000 kilowatt peak load is maintained during the entire launch sequence. To calculate kilowatt hours, we multiply 4,000 kilowatts by 0.0014 hours. This yields a total of 5.56 kilowatt hours used per launch, which compared to the 4 megawatt surge of power is a much lower overall amount of consumption, but that is because the load is only sustained for 5 seconds at a time. Disregarding any electrical losses, based off my electrical use at home in the month of September, I used enough electricity to power nearly 90 launches on Red Force. Or a department store consuming 60,000 kilowatt hours in a month could power nearly 10,800 launches. The 12,400 kilowatt hours my electric car has consumed in 2 years could power 2,230 launches. And if the roughly 81 kilowatt hour battery pack in my EV could disperse enough energy for a Red Force launch, it could support as many as 14 launches. Now, because Red Force will launch hundreds of trains a day, its total electrical use over the course of a day becomes insane. Say if Red Force launches on average 40 trains an hour. 40 launches times 5.56 kilowatt hours yields 222.4 kilowatt hours per hour of operation. Then just after 4 hours of operation, the ride will have consumed nearly 1 megawatt hour. And that's just with 4 hours of operation. Additional hours of operation will only increase the overall electrical consumption. Then over the course of an entire year, Red Force will consume an even more absurd amount of electricity. Going back to the amount of electricity used per launch, let's examine the specific energy supplied by the supercaps. As discussed earlier, the supercaps account for 3/4 of the electricity needed per launch. Thus, with a 3 megawatt or 3,000 kilowatt load sustained for 5 seconds, or 0.0014 of an hour, that yields a total of 4.167 kilowatt hours dispersed by the supercaps to power each launch. Then the remaining 1.39 kilowatt hours to power each launch comes from the electrical grid. But these numbers do not count for electrical losses, both from the supercaps and electrical grid. Supercapacitors are very efficient, but not 100% of their available energy will be dispersed, and electrical losses will occur downstream as power surges through the ride's kilometers of electrical wiring. So I'd guess one of the two following scenarios occur. Either the supercaps do provide 4.167 kilowatt hours, and even with electrical losses following, that is enough energy to propel trains over the top hat. Or the supercaps supply more than 4.167 kilowatt hours, so that following all electrical losses, 4.167 kilowatt hours are actually pulsed into a launching train. And DriveTech states that Red Force's supercap system contains 25 megajoules of energy. Just like how kilowatt hours are a unit of energy, joules are also a unit of energy. energy. They even happen to be the SI base unit for energy, although kilowatt hours are the industry unit of energy for electricity. 1 megajoule is equivalent to 0.278 kilowatt hours. Multiplying 25 megajoules by 0.278 means Red Force's supercaps have 6.94 kilowatt hours. That's roughly 67% more energy than the theoretical required 4.167 kilowatt hours, potentially meaning there is extra power if the supercaps do output additional energy to account for energy losses. With that, I'd like to shed more light on just how insane the rate at which the supercaps can charge and discharge. Let's compare again to the battery in my Model Y. At 81 kilowatt hours, the battery is rated to DC fast charge at 250 kilowatts. Batteries have something called a C rating. In essence, it's the amount they can charge or discharge at relative to their capacity. 250 kilowatts divided by 81 kilowatts yields a C rating of nearly 3.1. So my car can charge at a rate of over 3 times the size of the battery pack, which is pretty good for an EV, but is garbage compared to Red Force's supercaps. I believe Red Force's supercaps can charge at an average rate of 600 kilowatts, nearly 2.5 times the rate of my Model Y. This is evident in the product listing of Red Force's SCES 600 DC, which has a nominal DC power of 600 kilowatts and a maximum DC power of 1200 kilowatts. This means 600 kilowatts is the recommended charging speed, but the maximum charge speed can crank to 1200 kilowatts for short durations without causing damage. Since the supercap can recharge in just 30 seconds, a nominal charge rate of 600 kilowatts makes sense. With a full hour of charging at 600 kilowatts, that would be enough to charge a capacitor from dead to 600 kilowatt hours, without accounting for electrical losses, of course. The math being 600 kilowatts times 1 hour, which equals 600 kilowatt hours. But with just 30 seconds of charging, that is only 0.0083 of an hour. Multiplying 600 kilowatts by 0.0083 hours yields 5 kilowatt hours, which again does not account for electrical losses, but should be greater than the theoretical 4.167 kilowatt hours demanded from the supercaps for each launch. Then to account for additional energy, the charge rate most likely boosts for short duration since there is room to go up to 1200 kilowatts. Overall, this charge rate is the power the supercaps pull from the power grid between each launch, which helps reduce the peak load of electricity that Red Force demands from the power grid while operating. This is all part of the system that avoids the coaster pulling all 4 megawatts from the grid each time it launches a train. Anyway, my point is that with a 600 kilowatt charge rate for the only 6.94 kilowatt hour supercapacitor, that is a C rating of over 86. And at a 1200 kilowatt charge rate, a C rating of nearly 173. At the moment, batteries can never reach this insane level of charging. Then for the 6.94 kilowatt hour supercap to output an even higher 3 megawatts is just absurd. Dividing 3 megawatts or 3000 kilowatts by 6.94 kilowatt hours equals a C rating of over 432. I hope my math helps paint the picture of just how incredible Red Force's supercaps are. Even more crazy is there are more powerful than DriveTech supercaps and other Intamin roller coasters. Hagrid's Magical Creatures Motorbike Adventure at Universal's Islands of Adventure has a larger 52 megajoule, or 14.4 kilowatt hour supercap that can output an even higher 6 megawatts. The upcoming Falcon's Flight at Six Flags Qiddiya, which will open as the world's tallest, fastest, and longest roller coaster, will feature an even larger 92 megajoule, or 25.6 kilowatt hour supercap that can output an even more impressive 11 megawatts. However, the major difference with these systems is that the supercaps support multiple launches. So rather than a 3 megawatt surge for just one launch like in Red Force, Hagrid splits its 6 megawatts between its 7 different launches as needed, and each of Hagrid's launches are far slower with much less acceleration, meaning they should demand less power than Red Force's faster singular launch. Falcon's Flight will most likely split its 11 megawatts between the Maverick-like LSM lift hill on steroids. This ridiculous uphill launch that I'd guess will consume more than 3 megawatts, and what appears to be a ridiculous downward launch on the cliff drop because I guess this drop wasn't big enough already. I chose Red Force to be the focal point of this video as it used this technology first to achieve speeds never done before with LSMs. Top Thrill 2 at Cedar Point will reach a slightly faster 193 kilometers per hour when that opens in 2024, but its launch is overall less impressive. It features a swing launch, meaning the train takes several passes forward and backward through the same launch track track to reach top speed. And based off the animation, the first launch takes 7 seconds just to reach 119 kilometers per hour. Hopefully this isn't the case, but Top Thrill 2's trains are 5 cars long instead of 3 like on Red Force, meaning they're definitely heavier. In addition to its less impressive looking launch, Top Thrill 2 looks to have a longer launch track than Red Force between the original launch track and the new portion of launch where Top Thrill Dragster's transfer track was previously. I'd guess from the new start to finish, Top Thrill 2 has a launch track over 180 meters long, with a few meters not having stators to house the track switch into the launch. There are also 2 sets of stators that run parallel to each other. Red Force features a single set of stators along its 160 meter long launch track, and only 128 meters of that are taken by stators according to Daniel Chopin at Intamin. The first 60 meters of launch track features only stators. This is where riders feel the highest level of acceleration. Red Force has a peak acceleration rate of 1.35 Gs at the start of the launch. After that, the acceleration rate reduces. Trains are accelerated from nearly 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in just over 2 seconds, and reach 180 kilometers per hour within 5 seconds. Overall, the launch has an average acceleration rate of just about 1 G based off the top speed of 180 kilometers per hour achieved in 5 seconds. After the first 60 meters of launch track, the following 75 meters of launch track see a repeating pattern of 3 brake fins followed by 6 stators. This pattern repeats 10 times, followed by a set of brake fins into about 25 meters of stators that curve into the top hat. Oddly, if the ride truly takes 5 seconds to reach 180 kilometers per hour, technically the train hits 5 seconds as it enters this final 25 meter stretch of stators. So either the ride takes slightly longer than 5 seconds to reach top speed, or the top speed is achieved before these LSMs and they're only here as a buffer. I'd guess the latter. Either way, the ride hits its top speed immediately before climbing the top hat, which is actually not the case on Intamin's hydraulic launching roller coasters like Kingda Ka. On Kingda Ka, you only accelerate until right here, at which point the catch car brake shown here begins slowing the launch system while the train continues on its own momentum. Here is that process on Furious Baco, as the train flies over the catch car as it decelerates and the catch car brakes. This large gap of coasting until the initial incline leaves the opportunity for the train to be slowed down by wind or colder temperatures, increasing the chance for rollbacks. Top Thrill Dragster at Cedar Point was even worse. It only accelerated trains until right here, and then even following the stretch of catch car brakes had additional straight track following the actual launch track into the top hat, which lengthened the coasting time and further increased its likelihood for rollbacks. Red Force has the benefit of not having a moving launch system to slow down, so the motors accelerate the train to full speed directly into the start of the top hat without the need of a gap. This is one factor that helps avoid rollbacks, and LSMs themselves are much more accurate than hydraulic launches at achieving a desired speed, further limiting the chances of rollbacks. But if a rollback does occur, Red Force's launch track is built to properly handle this. As I mentioned earlier, the stators can act as magnetic brake fins and slow the backward traveling train. However, they're not as efficient as the copper brake fins also built into the launch, which is why the launch track was essentially extended purely for these brake fins. While an empty train that falls from the peak of the top hat slows to a crawl well before the station building, a fully loaded train filled with riders that falls from the same point doesn't slow to a crawl until right before the station building. Thus, a launch track just 128 meters long consisting of only stators wouldn't be adequate at slowing a fully loaded train that rolled back. This would be an issue as trains would overshoot the launch track while decelerating and enter the load station where another train could be. This would violate the block zones of the coaster and could lead to a potential collision and injuries to riders. For those of you who are unfamiliar, a block zone is a section of ride that only one train may occupy. At the end of a block zone is a method to stop a train in case the block zone ahead is still occupied. This is the safety system that prevents roller coaster trains from colliding with one another. I believe these are the block zones of Red Force. First is the load station where riders board. Next is the launch block, which starts right outside the load platform and extends to just over the peak of the top hat, at which point the train will not roll back. Then is the brake block, which consists of the drop down the top hat, the section of trim brakes afterwards, and the actual brake run that follows into the large number of tire drives. Next is the transfer block, which consists of the turnaround back into the station and transfer track. Last is the unload block, where riders depart the attraction. So a total of 5 block zones that allow Red Force to operate with at most 3 trains. According to Daniel Chopin, Red Force can launch a train every 36 seconds. That leads to a theoretical 100 launches per hour and 1200 riders per hour with the coaster's 12 passenger trains. To make this interval possible, a train would need to be dispatched into the launch block before the train ahead clears the brake block. Similar to Top Thrill Dragster, a train can advance into the launch track once the train ahead clears the crest of the top hat. Once the train ahead exits the brake block, the train in the launch block would begin the launch sequence. However, I estimate this process to actually take 42 seconds instead of 36 seconds, as the ride doesn't seem programmed to allow trains to quickly exit the brake block. Notice how trains slow to a crawl before moving forward, whereas Velocicoaster at Universal's Islands of Adventure is much more efficient at clearing its final brake run. I estimate this longer interval time leads to a theoretical 85 launches per hour and 1020 riders per hour. This error in theoretical capacity is directly in line with many of Intamin's incorrect theoretical capacities. It seems the company does not properly account for the amount of time it takes block zones to clear, which is a critical factor to capacity. Either way, this lower capacity requires the coaster to operate with all 3 of its trains, which I believe it never does. This is a common practice at the PortAventura World Resort, even on its busiest days. Red Force usually operates with just 2 trains, which makes the separate load and unload stations actually extend the ride's dispatch times rather than optimize them. Thankfully, I hear PortAventura still operates Red Force quite well, leading to a quick moving line with just 2 12-passenger trains. So that will do it for this video on the theme park marvel that is Red Force. I hope you learned something new, and I hope you have a new appreciation for the ride's epic power management system. Comment below what you thought of the video, and be sure to like it if you enjoyed it, and subscribe for more nerdy content just like this. Thanks for watching everyone, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.